Okay, so again, today's session is going to be on the Luxul IT hardware, and the presenter is Jared Edwards, who's the Director of Technical Sales Training. So, Jared, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Appreciate it, and happy to be with all of you this morning. Hope things aren't too cold for you wherever you happen to be. Rick and I were talking a minute ago. It's about 35 where he is. It's about 45 or so where I am, but we don't have all the ice. We don't have all the humidity. So I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, but it is what it is. So happy to be with you today and happy to go over some of the things that we've either just recently released or are going to release here very shortly. And some of you may have seen some of these things and may have seen some press release announcements from the time when we had CEDIA till now. But I thought we'd just go over everything that's going on with us so that you could have a better idea of kind of where we're going with things. So as far as new product announcements, most of you know that we have for about just over a year now had PDUs in our lineup, and we've got the three different models there: a 2-outlet, an 8-outlet, and a 16-outlet. That's a strip that goes in the back of the rack. When we first launched these, they were great units and they worked with Domotz extremely well. They were very tightly integrated and worked really well with that. But there was a little bit more functionality that we thought we might be able to actually add in. And so we have added in some automation drivers for these. And what this does is allows you the opportunity to program right into your automation system the ability to power cycle a port or something like that, so that your customer can maybe power cycle their cable box or their direct TV box or their Apple TV or whatever the case is, because we all know those guys never lock up and there's never a problem with them. They always just run perfectly. Of course, that's not the case, and so we thought, well, what a better way to, if you want to, enable your customer to be able to have a little bit of control there. And so we have drivers for Control 4, Savant, URC, RTI, and Crestron. All 5 of those are currently available. Before anyone asks, yes, we are working on a driver for the Elan system as well. That is in the works. So that's coming, but I've got these 5 currently available. Some of them are available to download directly from our website. Some of them are on the driver store for each individual product. So for example, Control 4 and Savant both have them listed in their driver store, and on the Savant it's listed in their profiles. You just have to click to download the latest profiles. So it's all of it. All 5 of those are currently available, and they work really, really well. I've tried them on several different platforms, and it works really slick. So we're excited to have those as a little bit different way to integrate the PDUs into your automation systems and interact with your customer if you desire to do so. Another new product that we've got here is the P40, and this is a pretty cool, pretty unique thing. You can see here it's basically a repeater. We had years ago what we called the P30, which was an okay product, but admittedly probably not the very best thing that Luxul's ever put out. And so when we came to redesigning what we're now calling the P40, we had a very different mindset and completely different approach as to how we wanted to do this. First thing is, it is an AC 1200 device, so it is a dual band device, and that becomes very important here in just a moment. There are 2 modes that you can use. There's client mode for a wireless bridge to a hardwired device, because there is an Ethernet jack on the bottom of it that you can go out to a hardwired device or a small switch where you have a couple of other devices connected. Either way works. There is repeater mode to just extend the wireless network to another area that you may not have signal in. Now, the thing is, the thing that's really cool about this is that because it's dual band, it will actually repeat on the opposite frequency of whatever your network device or your client device is attached to. For example, let's say I've got a P40 in the system and I've got an iPhone that is connected on the 2.4 gig side of the network to the Wi-Fi. What this will do, or what it's connected to the 2.4 side of the P40, what this will do is we'll repeat back on the 5 gig side to the main network. The opposite is also true. If my client device, if my iPhone is on the 5 gig side of the P40, it will then repeat back on the 2.4 side. And the reason why it's able to cross the frequencies and do this is so that you don't run into the same problem that a lot of repeaters have, which is losing half of your bandwidth right out of the gate. Because with most repeaters, as you guys well know, I'm sure, most of the time, as soon as you lose half your bandwidth out of that radio, because half of it is used to grab the signal and the other half is used to repeat it back out. Well, with the P40, that's not the case. You have full bandwidth for both frequencies because you're not using the same frequency to grab and then repeat. So it's really, really cool way that it works. And it does work actually very, very well. It's fully automatic in the way that it does that. It screams. It is a faster repeater than most repeaters we've tested. It also does not do any Mac, not filtering, but Mac spoofing. So whatever you put onto it goes through all the way. So it doesn't hide the Mac behind its own Mac address. So it's kind of a nice little piece there. And of course, it's a great solution if you can't get a wire somewhere. We've had people connect an actual AP to this and run an AP where they couldn't get a wire somewhere. So it works really, really well. That is currently shipping, has been shipping for a couple of months. Don't know if any of you had the opportunity to use it, but if you haven't and you do have a need for a repeater, I highly recommend looking this one up because it does work very, very well for what it is intended purpose is. Okay. And it's $100 retail, so it's not out of reach for pretty much any system. The next thing that we have is a bunch of new fiber and SFP modules. As most of you know that use our equipment, most of our managed switches, in fact, all of our managed switches are capable of fiber connections. And we've had a couple of fiber modules in the past. That has now been greatly expanded. And so, as of course you've got several components that go along with fiber. For those of you who haven't used it, you obviously have the cable, you have the terminated end, and then you have the module, which is actually, of course, what slides into that slot on the switch. And so just as a quick recap, the connection sequence for fiber, of course, is you have the terminated end that goes into the module, and that module then goes into the SFP port on the switch. What we've done here is we've tried to expand the line, but we've also renamed every one of the modules to try and make it easy for you to designate and differentiate what the module actually does. Because as you know, different modules will do different things. They'll have different speeds, they'll have different capabilities. Some of them are duplex, some of them are simplex. And so what we try to do is make it very, very simple. So there's this whole chart here. We're not even going to go over this chart because I think it's super confusing. Let me try and break down real easily and quickly what it is that we've got here. Two new ones to the line are RJ45 modules. So you can take an SFP port and convert it to regular RJ45 to use with Ethernet. The two modules there that are on the top of the screen, you'll see we have a 1 gig and a 10 gig version. If you're using a switch that has 10 gig fiber capability, like the stacking switches, then you can use a 10 gig RJ45. And with Cat 7 on shorter runs, you can get fairly close to 10 gig out of it theoretically. And I think that actually does work most of the time. If you're going to go on a longer run, obviously the speed slows down there, but there is a module that's available for that. Then we have our standard modules that we have had for quite some time, a single gig or 1 gig multimedia duplex. And as you can kind of see here, the way the new model numbers are laid out, it describes exactly what this device is. So in this case, we have a 1 gig RJ45. In this case, we have a 10 gig RJ45. Same thing is going to be consistent throughout the entire line. So in this case here, we have a 1 gig multimedia, or not multimedia, multi-mode duplex LC connector. Excuse me, I lost my mouse here. Duplex LC connector. The cable here that you see on the other side right here is the same cable that we've had for many, many years. This is our stacking cable. It is a 10 gigabit, half meter long fiber cable that you just literally plug into both switches, and they automatically stack and link up and have a 10 gig connection and are now acting as one large switch. So that one hasn't changed, and the 1 gig multi-mode duplex hasn't changed. We've just changed the model number to make it more descriptive as to what this device actually does. A couple of the new ones that we have a 10 gig multimedia duplex because we haven't had that in the past. But we do actually have that now so that you can connect switches that are far away from each other over on a 10 gig speed if you need to. And then we also have a 10 gig single mode simplex connector. The thing that's unique about this one is they come in a pair. So if you buy one of these, there will be two of them in the box, and they are matched up. And the reason why they do that is because in order to get the bidirectional transmission, one of them sends on one particular frequency in one direction, and in the opposite direction is coming back on a different frequency. So you can still get bidirectional communication even though it is a simplex fiber. So it's just a single fiber, but bidirectional communication is possible with these modules. And then lastly, of course, we have a 10 gig single mode duplex for shorter runs. Of course, the simplex would be for longer runs if you need that. So that's kind of a rundown of the SFP modules. Like I said, there's several of them that are new, but again, we tried to change the model numbers so that they would designate what it was that you were actually buying and what the capability of that module was. Any questions so far? Rick, I'll kind of let you manage that, I suppose. And do we have any questions so far, or are we good to just keep rolling on?
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't address that at the beginning of the session. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions tab. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen in the little dashboard. And then we can do a Q&A toward the end of the session. As of yet, we don't have any questions. So if you'd like, you can go ahead and continue on.
Okay, will do. Let me get back to this here. Okay, switches. We got a couple new switches. One of them that is just about to start shipping, and one of them that will start shipping here within about 30 to 45 days. The first one is an XMS-1208. A couple unique things about this. This is the exact same thing as our AMS-1208P. The difference is this one has ports on the front instead of ports on the back, and it is a half rack size, so it is a smaller form factor. It's not a full width. It has the ability to have two of them side by side if you wanted to. Other than that, the capabilities are the exact same. It is a full layer 2, layer 3 managed switch, has the full stack there, has the full capability. 8 gigabit PoE ports with 130 watt budget. So you can run 8 PoE plus devices off of this, depending upon what their power draw is, of course, as long as it's within that 130 watt budget. There are 2 gigabit Ethernet uplink ports and 2 SFP uplink ports, and of course, in this case, it's one or the other. There's not a total of 4 ports because they are tied together. So if you're using one of the SFPs, then that the version of the RJ45 that it's tied to, of course, becomes inactive, and vice versa. So we're excited about that. It's a great little switch. Like I said, this one is shipping now. We've had quite a few requests for a smaller switch with ports on the front. So for you guys that are doing maybe a small camera system, this is a great way to go, and has the full capabilities of everything that you would need to be able to run any PoE plus device, or any layer 2 or layer 3 managed options that you may need inside the switch. It's fully functional. So we're excited about that one. The next one is the AMS-1816P. And the main reason for this is because, again, if you're familiar with the line, most of you have probably noticed that there was a bit of a gap in the lineup with the AV series switches, and AV series being defined as the ports are on the back. We had the 1208P, which was a 12 port or an 8 port for Ethernet. And then you had to jump all the way up to the 2624, which was a 24 port, and there was nothing in between. Well, we're going to correct that, and we're going to add a switch to the line, which is going to be a 16 port switch. So you'll now be able to go 8, 16, 24, or 24 stackable. And so we're excited about this addition to the lineup. As you would imagine, with all of the other AV series switches, yes, it is a full gigabit switch with a full speed backplane. Obviously, AV series means that it has ports on the back. It is the exact same thing as all the other switches in that lineup. So again, fully managed layer 2, layer 3, fully compatible with all of your HD over IP stuff or any sort of traffic that you want to throw across it. Because it's got a full speed backplane, of course, it is very capable of handling all those types of things. This case, it does have 16 PoE plus ports with a budget of about 185 watts. And then, of course, you've got Ethernet and SFP uplinks to go along with that. So the idea here with these uplinks is that it allows you to be able to plug 16 PoE devices into each one of those ports. And then you don't have to sacrifice a PoE enabled port just to connect your switch back to your network or to your camera NVR or whatever the case is. So you have a couple of extra Ethernet ports there that you can use that are not PoE enabled, so that you can use all of the PoE enabled ones as PoE as to power PoE devices if you need them. That one should be shipping, like I said, within the next 30-ish days or so. We have a target date of around the third week of January for this guy. But whether it's the fourth week or so, we're pretty confident in that date. It'll start shipping at about that time. So great switch. Has the selectable LEDs for green and blue, just like the rest of the series does. It's literally, like I said, it's a full featured switch in the AV series line. It's just kind of an in-between that's a 16-port guy instead of having to jump from 8 to 24. Some of the new switch features, and Rick and I were talking about this just before we started the webinar here. All of these switches have a new feature in them, which we like to call self-healing. And this is a really cool thing. They're pretty much all available with the 4.11 or 4.12 version of firmware. And there's two parts to what this does. The first part is a schedule. And you can actually set a schedule on the switch now so that you can turn PoE-enabled devices, or PoE-powered devices, I should say, on or off at a particular time. And what this allows you to do is one of the main requests we have, which isn't as big of a request here in the US, but over in Europe, in a lot of countries there, they have laws or they have requirements where you have to turn your wireless radios off at night. And what's kind of, I tell the story of if you walk around Italy, for example, certain parts of Italy, if it's anytime after about 10 p.m., it's very different because there's basically no Wi-Fi being broadcast from anywhere. Everybody shuts their radios pretty much totally off, and then they come back on about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And so because of that, we had a lot of requests to be able to do that exact thing without having to unplug or put a PDU in or something like that. So the switches now have the capability of being able to turn off the PoE power on any specific port that you designate, and it is a per port basis. And then you can see there's a grid down below that you can say, I want it to turn off on such a day on Sunday night and back on or Monday morning, or whatever the case is. You can set the schedule however it is you need or want to set it. And it's not just, of course, for Wi-Fi radios. This can be any PoE device that you have connected to the network, whether it's a camera or a touchscreen or whatever the case is. You can set that schedule on that particular port for any reason. The real party trick, however, of the self-healing is what we call port recovery. And what this does is it allows you to now set on a per port basis, set the switch up to monitor the device that is connected to that port. And the way that it monitors it is by its IP address. So again, let's take the example of an IP camera that's PoE powered. if I know that the camera in let's say this example is 192.168.0.210, I set that IP address up in my switch for that particular port. And then what the switch will do is it will monitor and ping that device to make sure that that connection is still there. If it loses that connection, you can then set a failure action. And what this does is, let's say I'm going to reboot the remote power device. So if it loses that ping and loses that connection, the switch will now power cycle the PoE on just that port for that device, thereby trying to reboot the device and trying to fix whatever problem that there is without any intervention from the dealer. Now, of course, there are some things that it's not going to be able to fix, but the idea here is that it at least tries. And it tries to do something without you having to worry about monitoring this or managing that, because it'll try to do this automatically. You can see that there's several different options here. There's the startup time for how long the device takes to boot up. How many times do you want it to try to ping the device? If it loses its ping, how many times do you want it to retry to establish a connection before it does the failure action, and on and on and on. You kind of get the idea here. It's very similar to setting up a power cycle inside of a power distribution unit or regular PDU. In this case, though, you're just doing it inside the switch for the PoE powered device. So we're really excited about this feature. It's something that for those of you that may be doing larger surveillance systems, this is a huge, huge thing for you guys, not having to worry about, is a camera going to go down and then I have to roll my truck out just to go out and do it, or just to go out and fix it. And you know that when you get there, all you're going to have to do is pull that Ethernet cable and plug it back in so that you can power cycle the device. Well, this, of course, tries to eliminate that and heal itself for you. And then, of course, if it can't do that, well, then there's something else going on, and you're going to be rolling a truck anyway. But it does at least try to do something automatically to fix it before you have to get involved. All right, with that, let's switch gears here just a little bit and talk about access points. Most of you have probably seen or heard of the 1610. We're excited about this. It's going to be a really, really nice piece. It is the exact same form factor as the 1510. So if you guys have seen the AP lineup, we had the 810, and then a little bit larger physically was the 1410, and then a little bit larger physically was the 1510. Well, the 1610 is not any bigger physically than the 1510. In fact, it's in the exact same housing. So we were able to get a 4x4 device inside the same housing. And that's really kind of the cool thing about the 1610, is it's very unique. There's only a handful of companies that are enterprise grade companies that have a 4x4 device. To our knowledge, yet there isn't anyone in the custom installation space that has a dedicated 4x4 device either on the market or coming, unless maybe you include Ruckus. They have one. But no one else has got this that we're aware of. It is 4x4 antennas instead of 3x3. It's also AC Wave 2, which is cool, and we can certainly go into what that means if you would like. But essentially, it means that you can now have more than one conversation going on from AP to device. You can have 4 or 8 devices talking to the AP at the same time. So the overall speed, if you'd run a speed test, is not going to be much different than if you were on a 1510 or any other AP. But the fact that you have the ability now to, it's not just one device, it's multiple devices at the same time that the AP can distribute that same speed to, that becomes a huge factor in the usability and overall experience of the Wi-Fi that you're going to put in someone's home, because now all of the devices can take advantage of all of that speed at the same time. Of course, it's a 1-watt transmitter, as all of our APs are, and as you would expect, it will have Luxul Roam Assist in it, which is an active Roam Assist thing, not to dive down the rabbit hole here, but this is very, very different from fast roaming. Fast roaming is a passive system. It's not an active system. And so what we do with roaming is very, very different from what all the guys are claiming with their fast roam. Our expected ship date on this is late February. We are in the final stages of beta testing currently. It has been working as a standalone AP very, very well for a number of months. We're actually, like I said, in the final testing of it with the controller. And so we wanted to make sure that it was working very, very well and pretty much flawlessly before we released it out to the market. So that, like I said, the expected ship date of late February of next year. And I think that was it for the standalone. As far as when it comes out, yes, we will have pre-configured kits that go along with the 1610. So just like the 2510 kit, we will have a 2610 kit that will have 2 of the 1610s and the 1000 wireless controller all in one box that you can just pick up off the shelf at AllNet and walk up to the counter and you're good to go with one box. Of course, the controller can go up to 16 APs. And again, to reiterate, this is not going to replace the 2510 kit because the 1510 is staying in the lineup. This is just an addition to the line. We will also have a WS260 kit, which will be the 3150 wireless router with a 1610 also in the same box. So you don't have to worry about getting 2 boxes again. We're just trying to make those as a kit so that you can easily grab and go if that's what suits the purpose for that particular network. And then on the other APs, there's an update to the 810, and this is just a firmware update, and we are increasing the power, the transmit power on this guy. And a quick little background story here. When we first started using the 810, we were doing internal alpha and beta testing. When I first got one at my house, that thing was really, really hot. Like, not temperature-wise, but transmit-wise. This thing would cover an enormous amount of space. And we had at the time the 1410 and the 1510 that were both 1-watt transmitters. This one was meant to replace the 310, and if you remember the 310 from a couple years back, it was not a high-powered output device. And so we actually turned it down to about a quarter to a third of a watt. It was running right around the 300 milliwatt transmit power range. That is not going to be the case anymore. As you know, the 1410 has been discontinued, and so now the AP lineup for inside the indoor ones are kind of a good, better, best. Good being the 810, better being the 1510, and best being the 1610. And all that you need for this update, because along with those that good, better, best philosophy, we wanted to take this back to high power. So we are doing that, and it's, like I said, it's a simple firmware update, and all of a sudden your transmit power and coverage area will increase. So the price is not changing on this. This firmware release is already out. So if you have 810s that you have not used or that you've not upgraded, you certainly can do that and get the higher power out of them. So pretty much all of the APs now are high-powered units. This one's a little bit less. It's 900 milliwatts instead of the 1,000 milliwatts that the other two are. But in reality, in the real world, the difference between 100 milliwatts is probably going to be affected much more by environment rather than the transmit output power as far as the overall coverage area. So excited about that. Like I said, that's available on the website currently. If you have some 810s that you want to take a look at for upgrading, please do so. Okay. And then along with that, of course, we will have a new kit called the WS80, which will have a XWR 1200 wireless router and an 810 in the box. So again, not that you have to buy these kits this way, it's just that we see a lot of people buying those in combination. And so we thought, why not just create a kit where people can pick up one box and go? This does replace what we did have as a WS100 kit, which had the 1200 and a 1410 in it. And of course, now that the 1410 has been discontinued, the 810 takes its place. As with both of these kits, whether it's the WS80 or the WS260, of course, you can add up to one more access point onto that wireless router, onto the controller that's built into there, and seamlessly roam across all three devices. So again, to kind of bring this all together, here is our kind of our good, better, best from the access point of view. We've got the the 810, the 1510, and then the 1610 as good, better, and best. And you can think of this as 2x2, 3x3, 4x4, which kind of helps goes along with the theme of good, better, best. Then for the outdoors, we have two models. Of course, on the bottom there, you'll see the 1240 and the 1440. And for those of you who aren't familiar with these, the 1240, of course, is a single band wireless N that's 2.4 only. The 1440 is a dual band, so it has both 2.4 and 5 gig in it. And then, of course, we do have our point-to-point and point-to-multi-point wireless bridges. So a lot of people, I put this slide up because a lot of people will say, well, look, you guys have a lot of access points. Actually, we don't. We have 3 indoors, good, better, best, and 2 outdoors, good and better. And then we have a bridge, and that's about it. That's the whole lineup. So not as complicated as some people may think. Next on the list here is our mobile app, and this is not out yet, but again will be available towards the beginning of the year. And the idea with this is to try and make your installation job potentially even easier than it is now. And for those of you that may have been on a couple of our webinars, several months ago, we did one called, Set Up So Easy Your Grandma Could Do It. And the whole idea behind that was, some people have the impression that if I have to get into a user interface on my computer, my mental perception is that, well, that's much more difficult than using an app on my phone. And the whole point of that webinar was to say, look, it really isn't, because everything that you need to set up this device is literally on the main first screen that comes up automatically when you log into this device. Well, we have tried to say, okay, well, what are some other things that we can do to make this even easier perception-wise to you as our customer and to the dealer? And so we've come up with an easy setup mobile app that will allow you to set up the 2 wireless routers to begin with. And what will happen here is this will be an app that's on your phone that will just automatically find the router and literally walk you right through setting that router up so that you don't even have to get your laptop out if you don't want to. Of course, the expansion of this will be down the road, and that we'll be able to configure access points and controllers and all these types of things. But for right now, it's starting off with the 2 wireless routers. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow you to change the admin password if you want to, update to the latest firmware, set up SSIDs with security, whether you want to set up 2.4 and 5 gigs separately or together as the same SSID. You have all of those options within the app. And then, of course, it'll allow you to add 2 APs to the network, because that's what the controller inside the wireless routers will allow. And so we're really kind of excited about that. You see a couple of screenshots here with this, and just kind of give you an idea of where we're going. I don't know if some of you happen to be at the CEDIA show. We did have a demonstration of this running as to kind of how this is going to flow, but it's very, very simple. It's just a few steps, few clicks to set up the wireless system and set up the router and all of that. And like I said, it will expand, but now you have another option rather than the laptop or any other computer. But please don't misunderstand, even if you still have a laptop and that's your preferred method, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's my preferred method because everything that you need and everything that this app does is literally on the first page of the user interface when you first log on to it. So either way, they're both very, very simple. We're just giving you a couple of options there. And then next thing here is wireless controllers. I'm sure most of you are familiar with our wireless controller. We actually have a new one that is in the works. And one of the main reasons for this is, believe it or not, as you know, the XWC-1000 will handle up to 16 access points. And it surprised us, but we're shocked that we are bumping up and dealers are bumping up against that 16 AP limit way more than we ever thought that they would. And what's funny about this is that this is happening mostly in residential. And what it tells us is that there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of freaking big houses. And so we're bumping up against this 16 AP number. And so it was decided that we probably ought to do something to increase that. And we looked at originally doing an increase of, can we just expand, the number of APs on the 1000? And the simple answer to that is yes, we could. However, that's not the main problem. The main problem is you have to consider not just the number of access points that are connected to the controller, but all of the client devices that are connected to all of those access points. And since every one of those access points can have, 200 plus or up to 300 connections of client devices at the same time, you times that by 16, and now the controller has to manage all of those devices with their active roam. And the processor that was inside the 1000, we just didn't feel like was capable enough to do that on the effective level that we want. And so that's one of the main reasons for the 2000 coming out. It will have the same functionality as the 1000. In fact, we'll talk in just a minute here on some new features that are coming, but it will. This one will, the 2000 will support up to 32 access points, and it has a much more robust internal processor inside of it. Of course, it will support all the currently selling access points and all the ones that will come in the future. Just as a side note, controllers don't support the bridge units or the P40 for obvious reasons. They're a little bit more difficult to have managed on the roam. This is going to be your ideal situation for large projects or where you think you may need more expansion later. Whether it's large residential or small commercial, whatever the case may be, this is going to be something that allows you a lot more expandability as far as the number of access points and the number of clients connected to those access points. We're targeting Q2 of 2019 for this. It may slip a little further than that, but that is our goal at this point. And we're excited to have that as part of the lineup. We think it's going to be a great piece that kind of opens the doors, so to speak, for those that may have come across projects where they felt a little limited by only being able to use 16. As funny as that sounds, it's a real thing, and it comes up, like I said a minute ago, more often than we thought, but it is a real thing. So here comes the 2000. There are some new controller features that are coming, and this will be valid for the 1000 and the 2000 when it launches. But the 1000 will be coming with an update here within a short period of time. This will include all controller products, including those that are the controllers that are built into the wireless routers, the 3150 and the 1200. So this is going to be across the board for all the controller products. The first one is individual channel control. As you know right now, the wireless controller, when you have APs on there, everything is on the same channel. And the reason why that decision was made, frankly, is because it was found that by a pretty good margin, most mobile devices roam much easier and much faster when they are all on the same channel. However, we do realize that there are times when you may have very different amount of interference in the kitchen than you do in the living room, for example. And so we are going to allow each AP to have its own channel set up independent of the rest of the system, if that's what you need. The caveat with this is that I would caution you with is that please be aware that your device may not roam quite as seamlessly or quite as easily or quickly if you have a bunch of different channels set up. If you have every AP in a 6 AP system, for example, set up on a different channel, might delay that just a little bit. That is something that you had not experienced before when they were all on the same channel. So our recommendation is still going to be to leave them all on the same channel if you can, but if you do need to make an adjustment there, you will have the ability to do so. The next thing is central admin passwords. In other words, what this means is that when you assign a password to log into the controller, that password will now be transferred out to all of the access points as well. So you will have one central password that will get you into every device, and every device will be locked down with that same password. So you will not be able to have a different password on the controller, but then still have admin on the access point. So a little bit higher level of security is on its way with having the same password throughout the entire wireless system. And like I said, if you do put that on the controller, it will automatically be pushed out to all of the access points as part of the main config, just like SSIDs and passwords are today. The next thing is auto assignment of access points. In other words, you have a controller on the network and you plug an access point in on the network. The access point will look for the controller as it does right now, but right now what it does is it finds it and prepares itself for you to add it to the controller. That's no longer going to be the case. What's going to happen now is it will, if you want it to, you can have it automatically assign itself. So the control, or excuse me, the access point will boot up. It will find the controller and automatically add itself and automatically configure the SSID, the passwords, what channels you're on. All of the entire config will automatically be pushed to the access point without any intervention from you or any configuration setup from you. All you have to do is plug the AP in, and it will find the controller and automatically configure itself. So from a installation and a setup standpoint, we're trying to make it even easier for you to be able to actually get a network up and running. And then lastly, we will also allow the adjustment of transmit power per AP. And this is another one that's a little bit of a cautionary thing. It's something that we have not allowed in the past. There's a lot of other brands that do allow for a power adjustment. Some of the time it's because they don't have an active roaming solution, and so their transmit power adjustment is the compensation for that. In this case, what it does is that because now all of our APs are high powered, there may be a situation where because of the construction type, you don't need or want high powered. Let's take the example of like an older home like Rick's, who was built in the 20s, that probably has lath and plaster walls in it. If that's the case, it doesn't matter how high powered your AP is, there's a good chance with all of that metal mesh in the wall, it's not going to go very far outside of a room or so. And so you may have to take more of the approach of breadcrumbs by placing a bunch of APs in a bunch of different locations just to get consistent coverage. And if that's the case, then you may not need high powered APs, and so we will allow you to adjust that level down so that you can get to the right amount that provides the coverage for the area that you need, but doesn't necessarily try to blast through all that metal mesh in all those walls non-effectively, because it's not going to work really well, as I'm sure most of you have experienced at one point or another. There's certain materials that Wi-Fi just does not go through very well, and if that's the case, then you have the ability to adjust the transmit power if you need to. We suspect that most people are going to leave this at high powered. I would think that most people will, but the ability and option is going to be there should you come across that job that you do need to use that. So those things are coming, and like I said, and like it says at the top of the screen there, they will be available on both the 1000, the 2000, and the controllers that are built into the wireless routers. So pretty cool stuff there. Okay. Rick, let's just take a moment here. Is there any questions on anything that we've gone over so far, or where are we at with that?
We've only got a couple questions. One of them is on the point-to-point and point-to-multipoint, so I think maybe we can circle back to that toward the end.
Okay.
But we had a question coming on the mobile app. Is it going to be able to be added to existing systems with Epic 3 and Epic 5 routers, or with any of the all-in-ones?
In other words,
like
you're going to be able
a
to
firmware
configure?
update or something like that will allow.
Yes. In order for the controller, or excuse me, in order for the router to be able to see the app and be configured by it, it will need to be on one of the latest firmwares and a new firmware that will be coming and that will be available. So yes, you can go back to existing systems and update to this firmware and then set it up. However, if you have an existing system there's really not much of a point to the app because the router's already set up and running. All you're doing at this point is updating the firmware. And you probably won't need to run through the setup process again because your SSIDs and everything should already be running if it's an existing system.
Okay.
So
Okay. So
yes, you
I'm not.
can.
I don't really understand
Don't know that
the
it's really relevant.
the full reasoning for the question, but maybe I'm thinking like in my past, some of my clients were kind of that power user style, or maybe they would want to have access to go in and do their own config adjustments if they needed to, like the client's
Oh,
son
from
was an
a
IT person or something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
You could turn it over to them, but this is not meant as a
Okay.
consumer piece. This is
Uh-huh.
meant as a installation speed up process for the integrator, for the dealer.
Just a quick get in, get out setup tool.
Yeah, if they happen to need to set up a network and don't have a laptop with them or something like that, then they can use this method. So yes,
Okay.
it's meant as a tool for the dealer.
All right. Does that address the question that you had? Yes, it looks like okay. And then the next one is when will the new controller features become available?
That's a great question. I don't have an exact date. They are shooting for Q1 of 2019, but I don't have an exact date. And I think they're trying to shoot for the February timeframe, early February. But don't quote me on that. I don't have an exact date from engineering, but it is targeted for Q1.
Okay, perfect. And then that's really it, except for the question on the applications of the bridge components
Okay,
for outdoor.
sure. Let me roll through
Sure.
the last couple slides I got, and then yes, we'll address that and any other questions that come in. So, uh, obviously, some advantages of Luxul. Some of you may or may not be aware of this. We do have what we call our customer assurance program, which is free design assistance of a network. And I know some of you guys are very, very good with networks and feel very comfortable designing them and deploying them, but some of you may not have that same level of confidence, and that's okay. We're happy to have your back on that. So, just as a quick example here, whether you're looking for something that is a layout of, hey, what products do I need? How do I connect them up? What should I do? What do I need to accomplish? What I need to accomplish in this particular network? We can provide that type of a layout for you. We can also provide a wireless diagram and say, hey, look, this is where we think you ought to put your APs in this place. And by doing so, this is the kind of coverage that we think you're going to get. Now, of course, with wireless, the one thing that we can't do is get on site and actually verify with a site survey or some sort of dB measurement what it is you're actually getting in that environment. But the cool thing about this assurance program is that uh, there is a guarantee behind it. And that guarantee is if you send us your plans and we design it for you and you get to the job site and something doesn't work the way that it needs to work, if we need to, we will send out additional product on our dime in order to make that right. So, for example, if you say, "Hey, look, I've measured this and I've got the APs where they should be, and I should be getting signal in this one back bedroom, but I'm just not getting what I really need, and we need to send another access point out," we can do that. That's no problem. So we want to stand behind you and be your partner and say, "Look, it's okay if you're not feeling like you're a network design guru today. That's cool. We'll be your partner and we'll have your back on that." One of our sales guys actually puts it this way: we're the only wireless company stupid enough to actually guarantee wireless. Well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say we're guaranteeing things, but what we are guaranteeing is that based upon the plan, you will have the coverage that you need. You will have the infrastructure on the wired side that you need in order to make that network work the way that it needs to for that particular project. Okay. Obviously, a lot of you guys are in business to stay in business. I'm sure that none of you are a nonprofit organization, at least certainly not on purpose. And so, because the network now is so essential for everything that we do, whether it's a full blown automation system or whether it's just, hey, will you come help me hook up my Nest thermostat? Either way, you are now getting involved with network. And so, if that's the foundation of everything that we're going to build on top of it, why would you do something that you can't make any money on? And so, of course, some of the things here that we offer are the ability to make money on the network product as well, rather than using a brand that's available everywhere. Uh, there's 40 plus points of margin on stuff which sold only through the CEDIA channel. It's not online. And then on top of that, it's a commercial grade solution. And we kind of categorize this as a couple different things. We think there's consumer, and then a step up would be commercial, and then a step up from there would be enterprise. We're not claiming to be enterprise. We don't have enterprise type pricing. I do feel that there are two places where we heavily knock on the door of enterprise gear, and that is with our switches. They are full layer 3 switches, just like a Cisco or any of those other upper end switches. And then with the active roaming technology and the controller, that is very much an enterprise grade level feature. It is not something that is typically found in a lot of the other stuff that is out there in the CEDIA market. And then we want to try and make it simple to install. And if you have problems, have somebody that you can call for that. And that's why we have an entire dedicated tech support team that's very good at what they do and interested in helping you out and so forth. So if you have a problem, you do have someone that you can rely on to call that will help you get past whatever it is so that you can move on in your installation. Obviously, all of our products have a 3-year warranty on them. And I don't know if any of you have taken advantage of this, but we can do these webinars, we can do live training events, which we love to do. We do them all over the country, and we love to see you guys come out for those. They're very, very beneficial. But there is one thing that I can do that maybe trumps all of those others, and that is getting the product into your hand, letting you play with it so that you can realize, yeah, this stuff actually does do what they say it'll do. And number two, it can get you confidence because you've already set it up in your home or your office. And then when you get out to that job site, instead of going, yeah, maybe I think I can make this work, you go, yeah, I can make this work. No problem. I've done it before. I've made it work. So I know how to do it, and I know that it's going to do what I need it to do. And so if you're interested in that, one time we do allow you to purchase product for your home or your company at 50% off of dealer cost. And this is just a one-time thing. It is the only time that you will buy product directly from Luxul instead of going to AllNet. And we would highly encourage you to go to AllNet for everything else. But if that's something that you're interested in, send us an email to sales@luxul.com, and we'll help walk you through that process there. And then, of course, education is a pretty big deal for us. We do have a number of webinars on our website currently, everything from the very, very basics of what an IP address is all the way up to heavier topics like VLANs and VPNs and remote management and IGMP. We just did that one a couple weeks ago. And so all these different topics that you can jump on and learn about. The webinars are about an hour long, and if you've got an hour, you're good to go. And we encourage you to watch those. They're very informational. However, sometimes we realize not everybody's got an hour, certainly not if you're on the job site. So the other option is we have about 40 or so how-to videos that are available on the network, or excuse me, on the website. And the idea behind these is they're videos that are just a couple of minutes long, 2, 3, 4 minutes long, and they are very product and situation specific. In other words, if you've got a specific problem, or how do I configure this particular device on the network, or how do I set up this switch or this router, how do I get around this problem that I'm having, you might want to check out the how-to video section of the website, because it's very possible that there is a video there that shows you how to get around that, or how to do that, and you can then quickly move forward with your installation rather than having to call tech support. Now, don't get me wrong, tech support's great and they're there for a reason, but you may want to consider checking out the how-to videos section of the website before you give them a call, just to see if there may be an answer there that you can get quickly on while you're on the job site. So those are available to you also. Hey, and that's about all we had for today. Here's some information for you to be able to contact us if you need to, or follow us on social media. And with that, Rick, I'll open it back up to you and whatever questions we might have. Rick, you there?
Was I muted the whole time?
Yeah, I see. I
I
think
think I
so.
was. I was
That's
just
all right.
asking you a question.
Hey, worse
Okay,
things have
so
happened.
sure, it's better than being unmuted when you think you're
That's
muted.
right.
So the question came in about the timing on the shipping of the new 1610 access point with the multi-user MIMO. Hello?
Yes.
Oh,
It
did your
should
screen
be.
disappear?
Oh, did it? Oh, oops. Did I hit a wrong button? Oh, I did. My mistake. Sorry.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Yeah. So, well, I thought we lost the entire thing. So yeah, the question came in about the timing, and I apologize if you went over that.
No, we're targeting February of 2019 for the 1610,
Okay.
and that, like I said, that's our target date currently. I don't have an exact date for it, but we are in final beta testing of it currently. So I
Okay.
I feel pretty good that uh, that will stick. But again, engineering could all of a sudden do something, and who knows? But right now,
Okay.
February of 2019.
Okay. And then you said the new controller will exceed the previous limitation of 16. Did you say what the cap was on the new controller?
Yeah, it'll be 32.
So we're going to be able to do 32 access points, and you said this one will also be able to modulate the power output.
Both of them will be able to do that.
Oh,
That
okay,
slide
nice.
of features that I had will be across all controllers, whether it's the 1000, the 2000, or the ones that are in the wireless routers will also have those new features in them.
Oh, nice. So it's firmware update going back to even the 3100.
Correct.
Nice. Okay. All right.
3100 maybe. I'll have to verify that one, but the 3150 for sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And the other question that we had is going to be going back to the outdoor bridge. So do you have a resource that you can pull up on that? So the question came in point to point and then point to multi-point. When you're aiming and aligning these, what if the different, let's say the outbuildings are at different heights? How do you, uh, what's the
How
best
do I
way to
prepare
get
for that?
the best coverage? And should you prioritize one over the other or kind of set it so that they are each, like if you have to, um, basically how critically do they have to be aligned, I think is the question.
The bottom line to the easy answer to that is not very. These
Oh,
are
okay.
not these are not like some of the other products out there that have a little crosshair that you have to get, exactly lined up and that type of thing. These actually have a dispersion pattern of about 50 degrees or so in both left and right and up and down.
Oh, nice.
So the idea is that as long as it is within that area, and of course, the further away, the larger that coverage area becomes. So the idea is that it does not have to be critically specific. You can, as long as they're pointed at each other and they can see and they're within that coverage area, they will attach to each other.
Okay. And then what is the design parameter when you're laying out a system that uses a bridge for how much bandwidth or throughput you lose based on distance?
So I think I have I have to dig and see if I have an older slide for this, but this is typically the way it works. If you buy, there's a couple ways to buy them. You can buy them individually, or you can buy them as a kit. And the only advantage to the kit is they are automatically linked to each other out of the box. So you literally put up one of them and you put up the other one on the other outbuilding, and as long as they are facing each other and can see each other, and there's no obstructions in the way, they will automatically link up and create their own bridge, and you're off and running with very little, if any, configuration necessary. Um, as far as bandwidths, when we did testing, we did a couple different, several different tests, obviously, but one of them that we use as an example is we went out to the middle of the Utah desert, where, of course, in all disclaimer, this was a very RF-free environment, and we were getting at about 2 miles about 450 megabits per second over the 5 gig band. Now, that's not a real world scenario, obviously, because we all work in the real world where there is a whole lot of RF and we're not out in the middle of the desert. And so realistically, what we have seen consistently over and over is at half to 3/4 of a mile. Generally on the 5 gig side, you can get somewhere between 400 and 500 meg per second. The further away you go, obviously the bandwidth is going to go down, but we have seen that pretty darn consistently. If you're a little closer, if you're at a 1/4 mile, then you can get that pretty much without a problem. If you're on the 2.4 side, you max out at about 90 meg per second. That's just what the radios will do, no matter whether you're right next to it or a 1/4 mile away. They just kind of top out at about 90 meg per second. But on the 5 gig side, of course, which is where the bridge is, it's much faster. So realistically, I would say that you're going to be at half mile to 3/4 of a mile. If you can get somewhere between 350 and 450, I would feel very confident in saying that that's realistic for you to get.
Okay, thank you. And then you also lose throughput on each, and I don't know the correct nomenclature, but on each node outbound that's connecting back to the host bridge. So in other words, does it work kind of like, I don't want to say the repeater, but does it obviously it shares that one pipe coming back through the first bridge, right? It's just, in this case, it's a pipe over through the air.
Sure, exactly. And so let's say you can have up to 4 receivers on one transmit location. So let's say you've got 4 receivers there, and you've got a couple of devices on the end of each one of those outbuildings or each one of those receivers. Obviously, your bottleneck is going to be at the transmitter side, where you can probably only get about 350 to 450 through the air there from any one of those devices to the main transmitter device. So yeah, depending upon what you're putting on the other end there could be a little bit of a bottleneck. But I mean, think of it this way: most of the time, people are putting things like cameras on the other side of these, and unless you're doing 30 frames a second at 1080p and all these high frame rate stuff, if you back that down a little bit, even if you've got higher megapixel cameras, that frame rate's going to, or that data rate is going to drop pretty significantly, and you should not run into a bottleneck problem for most of the time. I don't know if the guy that's asking, maybe you can tell us what it is you're usually putting on the other end of those receivers, if it's something different than cameras, and then maybe you can get more specific on our example. But that's the example that I use, or that we see most commonly, and we haven't heard of anybody that's run into a bottleneck problem, because these things are pretty darn fast. They work pretty well.
Okay, so follow up. Now this is text coming through my phone from a dealer who has my phone number. That's fine. Will it support a just add power transmitter on the other end of a bridge kit? That's pretty direct.
Yeah. If it's 1-to-1, like if you only have one bridge going, and so it's not multi-point, it's only point to point, and the just add power transmitter is the only thing that you have on the other end of that, and you're within 1/4 mile or less and your complete line of sight, then yeah, probably. But those just add power transmitters and receivers are generally running about 400 to 450 megabits per second on their transmission. So you're maxing that thing out pretty much right out of the gate. If you're trying to do 4K, probably not.
Okay, so set at a lower resolution, and then kind of ideal circumstances.
Yeah, and
You're
I think with
still
the
at
just add power, you can go in and turn, basically you're turning up the compression, which lowers the amount of bandwidth required. So there's some things that you can do to manipulate it potentially to make it work, but just out of the gate, you're going to be probably maxing out a bridge here just with that one device.
Okay. And then the other question that came up also is related to just add power. Is the new 8-port half rack width switch, is that a AV over IP compatible product?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Fully layer 3 capability. So yes, it will do it.
Perfect. Okay. And we don't really have any more questions. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box or text me.
Any form of communication will do.
We're all net. We're flexible. So
Yeah, we do whatever.
exactly. All right. I think we're good. Oh, any updates on the Epic 5 on the big
Um,
router?
as far as, are you looking for a specific feature or something?
I don't know. Are there any cool firmware updates on the way? That thing's kind of a kick-ass little router.
Yeah, I mean, it runs pretty solid as it is.
Yeah.
There may be a few things that get incorporated with it just to, feature enhancements and things like that, but nothing that's a major update that I'm aware of.
Okay. Ooh, the elephant is in the room. Domot's pricing. What is up with Domot's pricing?
They are in the process of, or have actually officially now switched over from what they used to use, which they called credits, to just a regular recurring billing cycle monthly. And I believe you still have two options. You can do their month to month, which is $3 a month, or they still do have their lifetime license, which you can purchase directly from Luxul. And if you do so, it's a lot cheaper than buying it from them. It is $199 for the lifetime license. So
Okay.
$199 one time, and you're done, and you have access to that network for pretty much as long as the hardware is going to last.
Okay. So I guess that's the other question that always comes up whenever it's TiVo or something like that that has that lifetime option. Is there any sort of transfer mechanism, or is the transfer mechanism related strictly to like the unit failure, not end of
Uh,
life?
it's mainly it mainly goes with the unit itself. So, for example, if you're within our 3-year warranty, we're going to replace the router. If you're running it on a router, for example, that
Okay.
we're going to replace the router. They're going to transfer that without any questions asked.
Okay. All right. All right. I think if there are any other questions, please feel free to type them in. Nothing in chat, nothing else in questions. Jared, I think we're good.
Okay, perfect.
All
Well,
right. I
thanks
want to,
everyone that's still
yeah,
on, and Rick, I'll turn it back over to you.
yeah, it's lunchtime here. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If anyone has any additional questions for Jared or myself, please feel free to shoot me an email. And if it's something we can address, we're happy to address it. Otherwise, we can forward it on to Jared or his team at Luxul. So, I again like to thank everyone for joining us today for the webinar. And this is the last session for us for the year. We've got a bunch of stuff on deck after the first of the year, and we've determined that February is going to be our commercial solutions month. So if your company works with commercial AV projects, feel free to reach out and let me know what type of information or what type of topics you'd like us to discuss. So we've already got some ideas. And if you've got any topics in general that you'd like for us to discuss or for us to try to line up a vendor to do a specific topic, please feel free to reach out. We do this for your benefit. So thank you everyone for joining us on the session today. And Jared, again, thank you for agreeing to be the presenter on pretty short notice. And I'd like to say happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everyone.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Happy to do it anytime. And happy holidays to everyone. Take care.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and end the session right now.